The first time I saw Brent Daly stroll through the glass doors like he owned the oxygen in the building, I knew he was going to be a problem. Tan suit, whiter teeth than sense, and a Bluetooth earpiece he never actually used, just like the look of, I guess. He had that smarmy Silicon Valley glow, like he'd read 3 chapters of a leadership book and thought it made him immortal. He shook hands like he was trying to sell you something he didn't fully understand. And when he got to Miles, quiet, precise, gray polo tucked just so, he didn't even make eye contact. Just a dismissive, good to have you as he moved on to flatter the marketing team with promises of brand elevation and next-gen presence. Miles didn't flinch. That was kind of his thing. He wasn't the guy you noticed at first. He was the one whose code didn't break, whose servers didn't crash, and whose name showed up only when things went right. He ran systems integrity like a one-man monastery, quiet, disciplined, brutally efficient, and he didn't care about flash. Never did. I once saw him shut down a pitch meeting because someone said blockchain too many times without explaining it. If you're listening to this, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It helps our team keep making stories like this. You wouldn't believe how many folks tune in and forget to hit that button. It means the world. Anyway, before Brent showed up, things ran on what I'd call structured silence. No drama, no posturing. Miles had spent 6 years quietly building infrastructure that actually worked. Not glamorous, not pitch deck pretty, but when the lights blinked, they blinked for a reason, and he had the logs to prove it. I once joked he could run the place in a nuclear bunker with just a binder and a black coffee. He chuckled once. That was about as expressive as he got. Then came Brent. The board called him a growth phase optimizer. Translation: he looked good in investor meetings and talked like a podcast ad for hustle culture. Within 2 weeks of arriving, he'd rolled out a new vision doc with words like synergize and agile-based storytelling. He ordered the entire UI team to redesign our internal dashboards so they'd pop more visually. Never mind that half the charts were purely cosmetic. He wanted them investor-friendly. And no one pushed back. Not the CEO, not the VPs. They were all too busy checking the clock for the $180 million acquisition meeting coming up in 6 weeks. Everyone but Miles. See, Brent didn't understand the kind of quiet power Miles held. While Brent was out here spit-shining pitch decks for the VC crowd, Miles was the reason our servers hadn't melted during the last API spike. He knew where the pressure points were. He knew the error logs, the bottlenecks, the failover quirks. He wasn't just a guy in IT. He was the backbone, the firewall, the quiet insurance policy the company never saw until it mattered. Brent didn't care. On his 3rd Friday, he called Miles into conference room 4B. No agenda, just that slick grin and a fresh printout of our most recent uptime reports. He flipped through them like a toddler pretending to read a newspaper. "These aren't terrible," he said, tapping the chart, "but they don't sell." He looked up. "We've got a narrative to polish. You get it, right?" Miles said nothing. Brent continued. "We're not lying. We're just positioning. Let's make the uptime chart a little prettier. Get us close to 99.999% for the acquisition deck. It's just optics." Miles didn't nod. Didn't shake his head either. He stared at the paper, then at Brent, then calmly picked up the sheet, folded it, and tucked it into his folder. "Appreciate the chat," he said. He walked out. That night, after everyone had gone home, he forwarded Brent's request to his personal secure drive. No subject line. Just the original time-stamped message and the words, "requested revision." Then he backed up every log, every discrepancy, every maintenance window, and hidden downtime into a private archive. The lights in the server room blinked softly behind him as he sealed the folder under his own naming convention. Integrity. Final. And just like that, the countdown began. Brent shut the door like he was about to propose a felony, because in a way, he was. It was Monday morning. Miles had barely sat down at his desk when he got the Slack ping. Drop by 3C and 5? No subject, no context, just Brent's usual smug efficiency. The man had started using corporate shorthand like it was a personality trait. Inside the room, Brent was already standing in front of the whiteboard, doodling arrows between acronyms he probably couldn't spell. "Miles," he said, like they were old college buddies. "You've been with Corvest a long time, right?" Miles didn't bother to sit. Brent clicked a slide on the wall-mounted screen. It showed an uptime graph so smooth it could have been a ski slope. Too smooth. Miles knew the raw data. It didn't look like this. Now, I know what you're going to say, Brent said, raising his hands in mock surrender. But hear me out. We're not falsifying anything. We're just highlighting the right perspective, massaging the message. You get what I mean, right? Miles remained silent. The silence wasn't agreement. It was calculation. Brent pressed on. The buyers want 99.99%. That's the gold standard. We're close, sure. But those 2 outages in Q2, that's a footnote, not a headline. So what if we shift the log windows, reclassify the April restart as a scheduled refresh, maybe round up a bit on the auto failover recovery? It's not dishonest. It's strategic presentation. Just make the uptime chart pretty. He smiled like he was offering a favor, not a veiled demand. Miles finally spoke. And the original logs? Brent shrugged. Archived, encrypted, whatever. It's not like they'll dig through level 3 back-end data during diligence. No one reads logs, Miles. They read decks. What we show is what they believe. There it was. Not a request. A directive wrapped in a smile. Miles didn't push back. He didn't argue. He didn't storm out. That wasn't his style. Instead, he nodded once, calmly, like a man accepting a weather forecast. He picked up the printed version of the uptime sheet Brent had marked up. Actual service interruptions circled in red Sharpie like naughty little secrets, and slid it into his folder. Got it, he said, voice flat. I'll look into it. Then he walked out. Back at his workstation, Miles didn't touch the logs. He didn't reclassify anything. What he did do was open Outlook and forward Brent's original email request to his encrypted personal archive, tagging it with a single word: misconduct. Then he opened a clean document, titled it Variance Report Uptime Logs versus Public-Facing Metrics, and began cataloging every discrepancy: time, date, original log hash, and the new values from Brent's slides. Side by side, annotated, indisputable. By lunch, he had already logged 14 separate instances of data distortion across 3 reporting cycles. One involved a payment gateway crash during a vendor push that lasted 16 minutes. Brent's slide said it was sub-second. Another incident, an overnight AWS load balancer fault, had been relabeled as maintenance testing. Each of these came with a digital footprint. Logs didn't lie. People did. That afternoon, Brent sent him another Slack. Any updates on the revised chart? Miles stared at the message, hands still. After a moment, he typed, working on it. He wasn't lying. He was working on something. Just not what Brent thought. By Friday, the number 99.999% was everywhere. On slide decks, on hallway posters, even stitched into the damn welcome screen on the new investor portal. Brent had gone full carnival barker, touting it like it was scripture. Industry-leading uptime, he beamed during the last all-hands, gesturing toward a pie chart so green it looked radioactive. We're not just stable, we're bulletproof. Miles sat in the back, arms crossed, watching every face in the room nod like bobbleheads. The CEO clapped. Marketing cheered. It didn't even blink, because they knew better. They just didn't have the energy to fight it anymore. But Miles, he wasn't angry. Not yet. He was cataloging. He'd seen the magic trick, knew where Brent had sliced the data, shaved minutes, merged windows, shifted definitions. It was like watching a butcher sell filet mignon carved from a hot dog. Problem was, investors didn't eat raw logs. They ate pitch decks. And Brent had served them a feast. The first time Miles saw the internal newsletter call the company 99.99% reliable, he didn't reply. He opened his private archive and started what would become the most damning document in Corvest's history, a log titled Delta Stack Claimed versus Actual. Each entry was a simple structure: date of reported incident, true duration from system timestamp, claimed status, per marketing or Brent's slide, nature of manipulation, backdated, reclassified, omitted, SHA hash of original system entry, exported screenshot of Brent's circulated version. He wasn't just documenting lies, he was preserving digital fossils. Every entry had a digital fingerprint. And every day Brent opened his mouth, the gap between uptime and showtime grew wider. By the third week, Brent had convinced the CFO to start mentioning the 5 nines in pre-acquisition calls. Miles heard a snippet in the hallway. "We've achieved enterprise-grade reliability, comparable to Google." He almost laughed. Google had a 24/7 SRE team the size of their entire company. Miles had one part-time junior and a borrowed intern who thought DNS meant do not shut. Still, no one questioned it. The board was riding high on the incoming acquisition. $180 million wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was a moving train, and Brent had sold everyone on the idea that no one cared how the engine worked. They just wanted to see it arrive on time. But Miles knew. Every time that 99.999% got repeated, it pushed another false narrative into the bloodstream of due diligence. And the buyers? They weren't idiots. Not forever. Eventually, someone would ask to see the raw logs. So Miles made sure they'd be ready. He installed a cold storage archive node, a system backup that didn't mirror Brent's tampered views. It wasn't connected to the dashboard Brent's team had prettied up. It was air-gapped, offline, local. He called it Mirror Zero. Only 2 people had the decryption key, him and eventually the external audit portal. Meanwhile, Brent kept posturing. He added 5 nines to the company's LinkedIn header. He printed new pitch pamphlets with the phrase, "Never down, always on." He even filmed a video in front of the server racks, calling our uptime battle-tested and audit-proof. Miles watched it during lunch. Brent didn't even know which rack held the core switches. He tapped a fiber patch panel like it was a nuclear launch button. Detachment turned to something colder. Not anger, more like inevitability. Miles didn't fight Brent. He didn't push. He just waited. Waited while the slide decks thickened, while the lies stacked higher, while Brent kept selling a version of the truth that didn't exist in any system log Miles had ever signed off on. And through it all, he documented. Patient. Precise, like a scientist watching a controlled burn, knowing eventually someone would ask where the smoke was coming from. The first email from the buyer's due diligence team landed in everyone's inbox like a polite grenade. Initial discovery phase, week 1 interview schedule. There it was, rows of names, time slots, and agenda topics. Brent forwarded it with a comment that felt like a commandment. "Let's keep this clean and sharp. First impressions matter." Miles was third on the interview list. 3 hours before his slot, Brent swung by his desk unannounced. Again, the man treated personal space like a myth. "Hey, champ," he said, tone dipped in performative friendliness. "Listen, the buyers are going to want a bird's eye view of the system reliability matrix. You know, high level, investor friendly. Let's not bog them down with back-end nuances." Miles just stared at him. Brent chuckled like they were in on a joke. "I mean, no one reads logs anyway, right?" That line, "no one reads logs anyway," that was Brent's whole worldview in a sentence. Truth only matters if it's being looked at under a microscope, and he was betting no one would bother. The problem was, the microscope had just arrived, and it was hungry. In the hours that followed, compliance pinged Miles twice. First with a gentle alignment request, then with a more urgent one. "Hey, Miles, legal's asking if your systems audit report could reflect the 5 nines figure we're using in the decks, just to keep it consistent. Let us know what works." What works? Miles read it 3 times. What worked was the truth, but apparently that didn't print well on glossy investor packets. He didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, he opened a separate window, fired up his sandbox dev environment, and cross-compared the sanitized slides from Brent's deck against the verified logs in Mirror Zero. Every variance was color-coded, yellow for reclassified, orange for omitted, and red for fabricated. The chart looked like a Thanksgiving fire hazard. The buyers started poking around that same afternoon. Their first questions were mild, standard stuff. Encryption protocols, failover routines, maintenance cycles. Brent breezed through answers like a man who read them off a napkin in an airport bar. "Miles here can confirm our uptimes have been consistently best in class," Brent said during the kickoff call, throwing him a glance meant to imply solidarity. "Right, Miles?" Miles looked straight into the camera and nodded once. "We track all uptime and incident reports," he said. "All anomalies are logged and time-stamped." not a lie, just not the lie Brent wanted. After the call, another email arrived. This one from the buyer's cybersecurity lead, short, surgical. Would appreciate access to your raw incident logs for Q2 and Q3, format agnostic. Miles didn't forward it to Brent. He archived it, tagged it, audit thread external. Then, with a soft breath, he extracted the logs from Mirror Zero and placed them in a secure folder. He didn't share it. Not yet. But he timestamped it, logged it, and printed one hard copy for his safe at home. Over the next few days, the pressure became air you could chew. Brent summoned him twice more, once asking for talking points, and once, less subtly, saying, "Let's not confuse them with dev speak. This is about selling confidence." Miles said nothing. He had become a silent lens, observing every crack, every spin, every corner shaved off the truth to make it fit Brent's fantasy. He watched the new VP of marketing record a promo video about unbreakable continuity. He watched legal draft a press release with the phrase, "zero downtime in the past 12 months." And he watched the CFO approve it with a digital signature he knew would end up on a compliance notice one day. He didn't intervene. He didn't correct. He saved. He saved every version of the uptime report, every slide edit, every Slack message where Brent said, "Just tighten the windows," or "round up recovery to under 5 minutes." He exported the version history of the SharePoint deck Brent had manipulated. He logged the timestamps where compliance was coerced into aligning reality to fiction. Miles wasn't just prepping for audit anymore, he was prepping for fallout. And when it came, there'd be no question of who saw what, and when. It started with a single bullet point in a spreadsheet, highlighted yellow and marked inconsistent. The buyer's cybersecurity team had begun correlating our reported uptimes with the log exports Brent's office had provided. At first, they were quiet about it, courteous. Just a few clarifying questions in the shared Slack channel. "Can you confirm the timestamp format here? Is this incident logged elsewhere? Was this recovery automatic or manual?" But then the yellow highlights turned orange, and then red. Miles noticed it in the metadata before anyone said it aloud. Someone on their end had written a script. It was crawling through log sequences, comparing recovery times, parsing system status codes. They weren't just kicking tires anymore. They were lifting the hood and wiping the dipstick clean. On a Thursday morning, Brent strolled into the war room with a tray of coffees and a plastic smile. "Morning, folks. How are we feeling? Progressing smoothly?" A lead analyst, name tag clipped sideways on her lanyard, looked up and said, "We've flagged a few mismatches between the uptime claims and the back-end logs. It's probably formatting. Just need the raw incident files, original exports, no filtering." Brent didn't blink. Of course. Yeah, I'll have IT send those over. Our system's a little quirky with exports, sometimes drops trailing zeros, real pain. Give me until end of day?" The analyst didn't argue. She just nodded and made a note in her binder. That request was never forwarded to Miles. Instead, Brent fired off an internal message to legal. "Delay raw logs until we can recompile to match visuals. Blame format issues if pressed. Keep Miles out of loop." But Brent must have forgotten that nothing digital ever dies, not with Miles watching. By late afternoon, Miles had found the forwarded thread in the metadata logs of their internal Slack relay. Brent had copy-pasted part of a log export into the body of an email and instructed the junior sysadmin to clean it up before sharing. No version history, no change log, just whitewashed uptime to match the myth. Miles didn't say a word. He printed the thread. He exported the original logs and overlaid them with the manipulated ones, each one more egregious than the last. He didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, while Brent was busy hosting a technical transparency briefing in the boardroom with a tray of stale muffins and buzzwords, one of the buyer's analysts quietly knocked on Miles's door. She didn't introduce herself with a title, just leaned in and asked, "Is there something we're not seeing?" It was the first time someone from the outside had asked without asking. Miles met her eyes, held the silence for one long, calibrated beat. Then he said, "You'll want to request the raw system logs directly. Format: tar.das secure transfer. Include original hash comparisons." She nodded like she already had. That evening, after the building emptied, Miles sat in the data center surrounded by humming fans and blue LEDs blinking like quiet sentinels. He opened his secure archive, pulled up the email, the one Brent had sent that started all of this. Massage the data, make the chart pretty, backdate where needed. He didn't forward it. He just hovered over the button, then he marked it. Flagged for action, time-stamped for transfer, logged in the chain of custody. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel angry. He felt ready. The room was too quiet for how many people were in it. 15, maybe 16 bodies all leaned forward over sleek conference tables and glowing MacBooks, breathing in the sterile tension like secondhand smoke. On one side sat our execs. Brent, the CEO, a legal advisor who looked like she hadn't slept since Q3. On the other sat the buyer's diligence team, stone-faced and professionally unimpressed. The kind of people who measure time in audits and know the sound of someone lying through their teeth. Miles sat against the wall, not officially part of the meeting, but available for technical clarification, which in Brent speak meant stay invisible unless someone says your name, and even then, speak like a thermostat. The presentation was halfway through when it happened. The buyer's lead tech auditor, a tall man with glasses and a subtle twitch in his left eye, clicked to a slide and paused. This uptime graph, he said, tapping his stylus, reflects 99.99% availability across a 6-month window. However, our preliminary crawl shows at least 3 unscheduled outages that don't appear in this report, specifically July 14th, August 2nd, and September 19th. Can someone reconcile that for us? Brent jumped in like a man already prepared. Great question. Some of those may have been scheduled for testing or labeled as contained micro-events. I can have our systems lead confirm that they didn't affect service continuity. The auditor didn't blink. We've already analyzed front-end availability logs and customer-side error rates. The system was down, fully down. These were not micro-events. We need access to the original log series for this chart. There it was, the request, the crack. Brent's smile didn't falter. Absolutely. I'll coordinate with Miles and have them uploaded before end of business. That was his second mistake. His first was assuming Miles was still playing for his team. As the meeting continued, discussion pivoting to growth projections and user churn, Miles quietly logged into the secure audit portal. He opened his encrypted archive, pulled up Brent's original email from 4 weeks ago, and read it one last time. Massage the chart. Backdate logs if needed. Just make the story clean. No one reads the back end anyway. No one reads the back end. He uploaded it into the buyer's secure review portal. Clean, original header, full thread chain. He didn't redact a word. No explanation, no comment. Just a subject line. Requested clarification, source directive attached. The moment it hit the portal, it triggered a flag. Red. Escalation level 3. Miles watched as the email was opened within 90 seconds. He could see the metadata trail, the buyer's tech team pulling the message, verifying the timestamp, comparing IP headers. The chain of custody was clean, untouched, untampered. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The meeting wrapped 15 minutes later. Brent shook hands like a man who still believed he was the smartest person in the room. The buyer's team was polite, professional, distant. Their lead counsel asked for a short break before the final financial disclosures. As the execs filed out, Miles stood, unplugged his laptop, and walked past Brent. "You'll have those logs by 5?" Brent asked, eyes on his phone. Miles looked at him, just looked, then kept walking. Downstairs in the server room, the hum of machines felt different now. Less like burden, more like momentum. The air had changed. The tide was turning, and it wasn't in Brent's favor. Brent breezed into the conference room like he'd just won something. Late, of course. 10 minutes after the top of the hour, holding a green juice he wasn't drinking and cracking a joke to the CEO about traffic being hostile to winners. His suit was sharper than usual, new maybe. You could smell the cologne before he even hit the glass door. Behind him, the CEO, visibly tense, and their legal counsel, flipping through a manila folder so fast the papers were bending. Someone on our side had clearly gotten wind that today wasn't going to be another show and tell with inflated growth metrics and buzzword soup. The buyer's team team was already seated. No laptops, just legal pads and cold eyes. Their cyber lead was standing by the projector, waiting in eerie stillness like a man about to push the plunger on demolition charges. "Thanks for joining," the buyer's counsel said without warmth. "Before we proceed with the data retention review, there's a document we need clarification on. It came through the portal last night, properly time-stamped and verified." Miles sat near the back wall, perfectly still, not blinking, a ghost in the machine. The lights dimmed, the projector clicked, and there it was. Subject: RE Uptime Chart Revisions. From Brent Daly. To Miles Tran. Date: 4 weeks prior. Content: massage the data, backdate logs where needed. Just make the story clean. No one reads the back end anyway. No preamble, no disclaimer, no room to twist it. The room froze. Brent's smirk twitched once, then vanished completely. The CEO leaned forward, squinting like maybe he'd misread something. Legal shuffled awkwardly, then reached for her tablet with a speed that betrayed panic. Brent opened his mouth. That's taken out of context. What I meant was..." The cyber lead cut him off without looking up. "This email was cross-referenced with system version histories, internal Slack messages, and manipulated report metadata. It matches the hash of the export you submitted for Diligence." The silence was louder than anything anyone could have said. Brent looked at the CEO, hoping for a lifeline. He didn't get one. The CEO was staring straight ahead, jaw tight. One of the buyer's attorneys began writing something on a yellow legal pad. Fast, aggressive, no pauses. "Look," Brent tried again. "We were optimizing presentation. This isn't fraud, it's just positioning." He turned, suddenly, to Miles. Tell them we were just tightening the narrative." Miles didn't move. He didn't speak. His face was a closed door. The buyer's counsel flipped her notepad, looked directly at Brent, and asked, "Who authorized this messaging?" Brent's throat worked, but nothing came out. The CEO finally exhaled, just one long breath, and said, "We need a recess." The buyers agreed without a word. Brent was still frozen, halfway between standing and sinking, as legal quietly gathered their folders. The screen still showed the email, plain as daylight, his name stamped like a signature of hubris. The only movement was the projector fan whirring, loud and slow, like the room itself was waiting for the walls to fall in. Miles rose last, laptop under one arm, calm as ever. He didn't gloat. He didn't grin. He just walked out while Brent stood there in front of his own words. Pinned like an exhibit in a museum no one wanted to visit. The door shut behind Brent like a judge's gavel. The buyers hadn't waited long after the email went on screen. They'd let the silence sit just long enough to scald. Then their lead counsel, a woman who had said maybe 10 words the entire process, looked up, set down her pen, and asked the one question that cracked the room wide open. "Is this your definition of operational integrity?" Her voice didn't rise. It didn't accuse. It landed like a scalpel, quiet, sharp, final. Brent opened his mouth and nothing came out. His lips moved like he was scanning a Rolodex for a synonym for whoops. But the Rolodex was empty. There was no playbook for this. The CEO turned to him slowly, face pale, blinking like he wasn't entirely sure if this was still a meeting or the beginning of a legal deposition. His hand clenched around his pen until it snapped, an audible crack that no one acknowledged. "I think we need counsel in the room," the CEO finally muttered. "External," the buyer's lead added. Their own legal advisor, who had been whispering furiously with another partner, sat up straighter. "We're calling for an immediate adjournment. Legal review is no longer internal only at this point." The temperature in the room dropped a full 10 degrees. The board chair, previously quiet behind his laptop, stood. "We need a closed session," he said calmly. "Executives only. Brent, we'll follow up." Brent blinked. "You mean without me?" No one answered. He looked at Miles again, like maybe this was the moment where the quiet man would speak up and bail him out. But Miles wasn't looking at him. He was speaking quietly with one of the buyer's cybersecurity officers, pointing to a flash drive and confirming a secure handoff of raw logs. Authenticated, unaltered, complete chain of custody. It was the moment the whole structure shifted. You could feel it. The gravity moved from the loudest voice in the room to the one that had barely spoken. Brent had been selling sizzle without steak, and the room finally realized there wasn't even a pan. The board filed out slowly, like men walking into a storm they hadn't seen coming. One VP closed her laptop with shaking hands. The CFO quietly canceled his dinner reservation on his phone. Brent stood alone. No one asked him to leave. They just didn't include him in the next meeting. He lingered by the door like someone waiting to be told it was all just a misunderstanding. It wasn't. Outside the glass walls, Miles walked calmly down the hallway with the cyber team, heading toward the secure review suite. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. One of the buyer's team nodded at him with the kind of respect you reserve for the person who saw the fire coming while everyone else lit candles. Inside the boardroom, Brent's chair was empty. It would stay that way. And in the company Slack, a new message went up from legal. All data requests moving forward must pass through systems integrity, direct questions to Msir Tran. The balance had shifted. No fanfare, no speech, just the quiet replacement of noise with truth. The deal didn't die. It didn't explode in some public-facing scandal or headline-grabbing collapse. It just paused. The word came down 2 days after the board's emergency session. Transaction under internal review. That was corporate code for someone lit a match and now we're checking which room smells like smoke. Brent didn't return to the office. Officially, he was on administrative leave pending evaluation. Unofficially, his badge stopped working, his calendar vanished, and the only thing left at his desk was a sad-looking ergonomic chair and a whiteboard scrawled with half-erased buzzwords. Synergy, visibility, brand fidelity. Someone eventually wiped it clean. Legal launched an ethics probe, and compliance followed suit. The buyers sent a supplementary due diligence questionnaire, 22 pages, mostly about data reporting protocols and executive email trails. Everyone's tone shifted. Even the CEO, once overly confident, now spoke in clipped, careful phrases. And Miles didn't gloat, didn't take victory laps. He did what he'd always done. Showed up early, kept the systems running, answered every question with the kind of precision that didn't invite follow-up. He became the one person no one wanted to contradict. 3 days later, while reviewing restore point logs in the quiet of his office, Miles received an encrypted message from a name he recognized, the lead cyber analyst from the buyer's team. The subject line was simple: proposal. Inside was a brief, surgically worded offer. We'd like to retain you in a permanent advisory role under our Cyber Resilience Division. Compensation will be double your current salary, with remote-first flexibility. No public announcement needed. Let us know when you're ready to start. Miles read it twice, then minimized the window. Not because he wasn't interested, but because he already knew the answer. He just wasn't in a hurry to say it out loud. That afternoon, he walked a quiet loop around the building, habit, not ceremony. The halls were unusually still. People had started whispering again, like they did after layoffs or SEC audits. Fear doesn't make noise, it tiptoes. When he passed the executive wing, Brent's old office was open. Empty now, the walls bare except for the faint shadow where a whiteboard used to hang. The desk was cleared, the glass shelves wiped down. Miles reached into his bag and pulled out a small flash drive. No label, just a bright yellow sticky note pressed to the front. In block letters, it read, "Integrity isn't cosmetic." He set it gently on the desk. No one saw him. No one needed to. He turned, walked down the hallway, and didn't look back. Outside, the sky was overcast but calm. Somewhere inside, servers hummed. Logs ticked forward. Everything continued. But now, the data told the truth. And for the first time in months, that was enough.